In our first lesson, let's explore what React is. But before we starting, let me give you a heads up that this lesson might be a bit boring. However, the content we're going to cover is necessary to discuss. After gaining a basic understanding of React through this lesson, you'll have a better grasp of why certain things are designed the way they are in the upcoming topics. So, I kindly ask for your patience as I explain everything. First, let's take a look at how React officially defines itself. It says React is the library for web and native user interfaces. Here, let's focus on these two words. User interfaces. What do they mean? For instance, imagine that I want to display some student information on a web page. Based on your previous knowledge of JavaScript, how do you think you would approach this? It generally consists of 3 steps. 1. Send a request to the server to fetch data. 2. Once the data is returned, it might not be ready for direct use. You'll need to process it. This involves things like iterating over the data, filtering, formatting, and so on. Right? 3. Finally, we can use JavaScript to manipulate the HTML DOM to display the processed data in the designated nodes on the page. Here we can say that this 3rd step is where the user interface comes into play. To summarize, the user interface is the part of a website or application that users see and interact with, like buttons, text, images, and input fields. React focuses only on handling this 3rd step. It doesn't concern itself with the first 2 steps. Once you learn React, you no longer need to manually manipulate the HTML DOM, as React takes care of that internally for you. All you need to do is handle the first 2 steps. Therefore, we can also expand the official definition a bit and say, React is an open-source JavaScript library that renders data into HTML views. Back to the official definition, it also mentions web and native. We all know that web refers to web pages, but what does native mean? Native actually refers to the applications we typically install on terminal devices like PCs, smartphones, or tablets, such as Android apps, iOS apps, or desktop software. So, the React is not only used for creating web interfaces, but can also be utilized for developing application user interfaces with the help of frameworks like React Native or Electron. Next, let's discuss who developed React. React is developed by Facebook and now known as Meta, and it is open source. Let me give you a brief overview of its development history. React was initially created by Facebook software engineer Jordan Walk. In 2011, Facebook saw potential in it and began experimenting with it in their news feed. By 2012, it was deployed on Instagram. Then in May 2013, React was officially announced as open source. Since then, it has rapidly developed and been adopted by an increasing number of companies, including many well-known ones like Netflix, Airbnb, Uber, and Spotify. So why should we learn React? What are the benefits of learning it? The first point is that when you were using vanilla JavaScript to manipulate the DOM before, it was cumbersome and inefficient. For example, take a look at this code. When we were learning vanilla JavaScript, we often wrote things like getElementById, querySelect, getElementByTagName. These lines full of document calls are very tedious, right? And every time you manipulate the DOM, the browser has to do some work for you. It has to render and arrange the page. And when you make frequent manipulations, the browser is constantly doing work, and it's exhausting for both you and the browser. Some people might say, I know jQuery, I can rewrite it with jQuery, but I'm telling you, even though jQuery might reduce the amount of code, the steps the browser has to perform are exactly the same here, so the efficiency is still low. Whether you use vanilla JavaScript or jQuery, the browser still has to do a lot of re-renders. The third point is that vanilla JavaScript doesn't offer a componentization solution, which means lower code reusability. You've probably heard of modularization, breaking down large JavaScript code into smaller files according to their functionality. The benefit is that each small file has its own logic and can be imported into any project that needs its functionality. Just import it wherever you need it. Now, what we're talking about with componentization is very similar. We know the three elements that make up a page are HTML for structure, CSS for style, and JavaScript for interactivity. Modularization is only for JavaScript part, right? If you only know modularity, can you split the structure or style? Think about it. If there's a piece of structure and style on the page that others might want to use, what do? Componentization is the approach to break things down to the smallest level. It's not just about splitting JavaScript,
but also HTML, CSS, and even images, fonts, videos. Anything that makes up a particular feature can be broken down.
That's what we mean by componentization. We'll go into more detail on how to do this in future lessons, but for now, just get a basic understanding. You may have noticed that I've pointed out 3 issues of JavaScript without mentioning the benefits of React itself. Why learn React then? Because React is designed to solve the pain points of vanilla JavaScript. Let's look at React's features. We talked about the pain points of vanilla JavaScript, and React is designed to solve these. For instance, React has componentization, something that vanilla JavaScript lacks. We'll go into more detail about components later, but for now, let's focus on the concept of declarative coding.
What does declarative coding mean?
Before, we were doing imperative coding. Let me explain. If there's a div container that is red and now you want to change it to blue, we would do this using vanilla JavaScript or jQuery. We get the red box and change its style. That's imperative coding, step by step, telling the browser exactly what to do. But declarative coding is different. Using React, you only need to express that you want the div to turn blue, and after that, React takes care of the dumb manipulation for you. You don't need to tell it how to do that. It will find a way to change it to blue itself. With componentization and declarative coding, React increases our development efficiency and the reusability of components. The second feature is that in React Native, you can use React syntax to develop for mobile devices. As we mentioned earlier, usually, to develop an Android app, you would use Java or Kotlin, and for iOS, you would use Swift. But nowadays, if you only know JavaScript,
you can do mobile development too. Once you learn React, you can use React Native to build mobile apps.
And the third and particularly important feature is that React uses virtual DOM technology. With an excellent diffing algorithm, this reduces interactions with the real DOM. As we mentioned earlier, whether you're using vanilla JavaScript or jQuery, you're directly interacting with the real HTML DOM on the page. React, however, introduces the concept of virtual DOM, which isn't the real HTML DOM on the page, but a special DOM used by React. It doesn't exist on the page. Instead, it's stored in diffing memory during runtime. The diffing algorithm helps to compare virtual DOMs
when changes happen.
So, we've briefly introduced some related concepts of React. Starting from the next session, we will dive into learning React in detail.